The Ed Bernstein Show. Now, here's Ed.
Hi, joining me today is Metropolitan Police Sheriff Kevin McMahill with more than 30 years in law enforcement. And you are our 8th sheriff, and I've known every one of them, by the way.
Yeah.
And we've had some really good luck with sheriffs. But I find that you are, just my opinion, much more community oriented than some of your predecessors. How do you see yourself?
Well, first off, there's lots of fine people that were elected to sheriff before me. I agree with you about that, and they've really set Metro apart from law enforcement across the rest of this country. I think we do lots of things that others don't do, but I'll tell you, you know, I had an opportunity to become the captain of West Las Vegas, Bolden Area Command, and I had been a police officer about 20 years by that period of time, and we were at a point where we were arresting the children of people that I had arrested. And I thought to myself that at 20 years on, this is a legacy-defining moment kind of thing, in the sense that I didn't feel like that if the last 20 years I was good at what I did, put a lot of people in prison, took a lot of bad guys off the street, but if the end result is that we're just going to keep doing the same thing over and over, and recognizing that incarceration doesn't fix all of these problems that we have in our community, I wanted to find a way to get better connected. And so I had 13 homicides in West Las Vegas with a 0% solve rate, no relationship between the officers and the community. And so I set about to completely changing the way it is that we worked with, at the time, which was the predominant black community here in Southern Nevada. And so it was so successful, our completely different approach, that we've pushed that all across the agency now to every area command, where we have what we call Safe Village, and every single area command has a Safe Village effort within their community.
And you had a lot of influence in that. I mean, you worked a lot with minority communities, and you were really out there in the community, as you know, in your background, different than a lot of the other previous sheriffs.
Yeah, and I think there's another important piece to talk about here, and you know, because we say things like we're a community policing organization, but what does that really mean? Number one, right? And I think some people got lost along the way, but also, let's say that you're going to do community programming for the Asian community or the Hispanic community. What we really have to do is get into those micro communities within each of those communities. Because I'll give you an example. If you look at, say, somebody that's born in Japan is markedly different than somebody that was born in the Philippines. So you don't do the exact same programming. Right. The Filipino community here is 200,000 people strong. So very large, very vibrant community, and you have to do things that resonate with that particular community. Yeah. Same thing with the Hispanic community. Somebody born in Cuba, very different than somebody born in Mexico.
Correct.
Customs and cultures and all of the things associated with that. So we're really trying to drill down into each one of those larger categories to find ways to be more effective in developing that relationship, because what we know is relationship leads to trust, and when you have trust between the police and the community, amazing things happen.
So at the same time, do you reach out for more members of those communities to become officers of Metro?
Yeah, it's working out. Look, I mean, most of my peers across the United States would trade places with me in any second, because we're one of only 5 agencies out of the 58 largest that has under a 3% vacancy rate. We don't have trouble attracting people to Metro like so many of these other cities.
Why is that?
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons. I think the makeup of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, with me being an elected official rather than an appointed official, I don't have to worry about a mayor, a council, a commission taking my job away. If I don't do my job, then the voters can vote me out. And so I run the police department sort of free of interference when it comes to politics, although I am an elected person, and as a sheriff, they don't interject in what operational decisions that I make, and I think that's a really key component to the success of Metro.
Wow, yeah. Some of the issues that you've really pushed, particularly this year when you were talking about looking forward for the year, this coming year, 2025, you talked a lot about officer wellness. And you were really referring to mental health, right? I mean, I assume that Metro has great health care, insurance and that type of thing. So when it comes to mental health, I mean, you talk about it all the time, that you spend a day out on the streets and you're dealing with rapes and murders and some of the most horrific scenes, even traffic accidents. I mean, just going to a scene of a traffic accident with a fatality could be a horrifying experience for an officer. It seems almost logical. Okay, why don't all police departments have therapists and counselors and psychologists? But they don't. You do.
Yeah, look, a lot of this is born out of my own personal experience and in my wife's idea of creating this wellness bureau when she was still working here. Some of it is directly correlated to the event of 1 October in 2017, where we saw 58 people murdered and 422 shot and 850 injured. I realized that was one of those moments that we're never going to be the same because of what we witnessed and what we did and felt and heard and smelled and all of those kinds of things. And so I realized that when I became the sheriff, and prior to becoming the sheriff, that if I was going to have the opportunity to take on a job, that I was going to truly lead while I did it. And in this area of mental health, we had to break the barrier of the reason a lot of police departments don't do it. It's uncomfortable. They also, the officers and the leaders and the supervisors think that if I admit that I have a problem, then I'm not going to get promoted or I'm not going to get transferred, all of the negativity that comes with it. Well, I started off by simply saying it's okay to not be okay. You know, I lost my own brother to suicide a number of years ago, and I can tell you that in my profession, we lead in a lot of bad categories, right? Suicide, alcoholism, all the things that people...
Domestic abuse.
Recently, like 2 officers recently. But I believe it's a direct correlation also sometimes to the fact that we deal in the negativity so frequently. And so I decided we're going to do something about it. I took 7 positions that we had for police officers and converted them into clinician positions, led by Dr. James Tenney, and built this wellness bureau, and it has succeeded beyond my wildest imagination. We're seeing over 450 patients every month now, those 7 doctors are, and they are also now seeing retirees and family members of anybody that works at Metro.
Was that a hard sell to your officers? I mean, because it seems to me like, cops are, kind of macho in that regard, don't want to admit that they have a depression or some other issue, and they want to just tough it out.
Yeah, I think early on it was a little bit tougher, but also, look, I went out and I communicated to my officers via video, and I said, listen, I see Dr. Tenney personally, right? I realized that at 35 years now of doing this job changes you. It's very impactful on all of us. PTSD, sleeplessness, anxiety, all of these things are real in my profession. And it's funny, this morning before I came over here to talk to you, I was speaking to an emergency room doctor, and I was talking about the amount of trauma that they see as well. And he was saying to me that it's very similar to what you're talking about in the emergency room, except you guys are dealing with it in what he called left of boom. So all the things that were happening before, that led up to a critical incident where somebody is, either dead at a car accident, or and you know this from your line of work, you see people terribly injured all the time that you represent because of the bad behaviors of somebody else. And so, those things, I just realized that while I was going to be the sheriff, I had a responsibility to my men and women, to this community, and the thought process simply was this: if we take care of our cops better than we've ever taken care of them, they're going to take care of the community better than they ever have. And we're seeing that in our crime numbers today.
Now, you mentioned your wife, McKelly, was deputy chief.
She was.
So what you had, I mean, at one time you and she have a discussion, hey, one of us should run for sheriff. Who will it be?
Yeah, she could certainly do the job. Very smart lady. It's a difficult decision because, you put yourself out there, as you well know, when you run for office, and in today's world, people can say what they want to say and write what they want to write, and so you have to develop thick skin and realize who you are and be comfortable in that person, and then just go forward and try to make a difference. And I knew I could do it. That's why I ran for sheriff, and that's why I'm working on it again.
And then she resigned when you became sheriff.
Yeah,
That
I think she said she didn't want to work for me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, she always had to plan the opposite way, right?
Exactly.
The other thing you've talked a lot about is traffic fatalities. And we had 160 traffic fatalities in 2024. Are we above that or below that this year?
We're sitting at 159 right now.
Oh.
Before I walked in here.
Yeah.
So we're actually, it's about a 2% increase. Look, we are not doing well when it comes to fatality accidents. And when I say we, I truly mean we, because this is a community problem. It's not solely a police department problem. It's not solely a court problem or a district attorney problem. It's all of us. When we get behind the wheel of a car, we can't be drunk, we can't be drugged, we need to slow down, give ourselves times. I mean, running red lights, speed, all of these things are the major factors in people dying. Drunk and drug driving, speed, and red lights, right? That's why I advocated for the red light cameras. I know it wasn't a very popular idea, but we have to have some consequences for people that are going to go out there, and we have to change their behavior. And the only way you do that is through accountability. And so we're going to have to continue to have conversation around what this looks like as a whole. But I have a number of initiatives that I'm going to be working on here into the new year.
Legislatively, I mean.
Yeah, so legislative, but also operationally, right? Mm-hmm. There's ways for us to take and put more resources towards the traffic enforcement effort. You're going to start seeing traffic enforcement by my cops on the freeways as well, which is traditionally Nevada State Police's role and responsibility. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that people drive too fast on the freeway. They're not staffed at the levels they need to be staffed at to be up there effective. Mm-hmm. And so the idea is if we can get them to slow down on the highway, they'll slow down when they get off onto the surface streets. And we've seen that work in years past.
I was driving yesterday up to 215. I was heading west, but I was on the east side coming the other direction, up from Summerlin. I saw 1, 2, 3, or 4. I was 3 or 4 motorcycle policemen had pulled people over, obviously for speeding, I thought. Yeah.
So that's an effort called joining forces. Yeah. And so what we do is we get all the traffic folks from all of the different jurisdictions together, and we hit where the data tells us the highest accident locations, the fatality accident locations, and then what are the contributing factors to those accidents, and then focus our enforcement in on citations for those particular pieces. So we move all around the valley to all of the different jurisdictions, and they're doing a lot of good work with that.
Some people oppose the red light cameras, and they're also detect speeding as well, right? Some of these cameras.
Yeah.
Because it's like they feel like Big Brother is looking out at me, and it may not even be me driving the car, and I'm going to get a citation. It happened to me this summer. We were vacationing in Italy. I got home. 2 months later, I get a notice in the mail with 3 violations. I promise you, Sheriff, I don't recall ever. I was so careful driving there. I'm sure I didn't run any red lights, but I had 3 different violations, no way to fight them because they come to me in Italian, and and I'm 6,000 miles away. But I think that's a concern with people. How do you protect against that?
Well, and I agree with you. I think there's lots of concerns that get brought up by people that don't agree. The one thing I would say to you is, number one is there's no expectation of privacy driving down the roadway. I would ask people to look up today while they're sitting at every red light. Right. There's a camera in every direction that's RTC monitoring the flow of traffic. I think the issue that you bring up is probably the most important one is how do you capture the person driving that vehicle? There's lots of different ways, and all of the different jurisdictions have done a variety of different things. But if you're the registered owner of the vehicle, we have a picture of this person, that person's driving your car, who's that person, we can appropriately get the citation to that individual. But there's kinks to work out of it. Me personally, it's not about writing tickets. It's about getting people to slow down. Simply slow down and don't run the red light.
Red light camera ahead, that's enough to slow people down?
Yeah, I'm good with that. I always tell this anecdotal story. My mom and dad live in Colorado. I was recently out there, And I was coming from a part of downtown Denver that I had never been in since I've been here for so long now. And I pulled up my maps to see how to get back to my parents' house. And I didn't know they even had red light cameras out there. And so as I'm driving along, it says, hey, red light camera ahead, warning. And so it startled me enough to say, wow, I started watching the behavior of the drivers around there. Nobody ran a red light. Everybody slowed down. It had this calming effect almost, really, because people don't want to get the citations. It's about modifying behavior. You know, I give you this. I was driving home last night, or actually the other night when I saw you at the hockey game. There's two motorcycles that must have been doing 150 miles an hour on the freeway that drove right around me, and then a chase car that was right behind them. People, I mean, are we shocked that we have 159 people dead on our roadways today?
So when somebody sees that occur, I mean, is the right move to call 911 or call somebody and, hey, these guys just passed me at 150 miles an hour?
911 is not the right response to that. I mean, just by the time that call taker was able to take your information down, at that speed, those vehicles are going to be far, far away from. And I don't want people trying to drive fast enough to catch up to them to give us updates on the direction of travel that they're going. So you could certainly call 311, but it's also, I mean, I think you're seeing a number of instances today that we hadn't seen previously where we have our helicopter up in the sky, and pretty soon this is going to be going on with drones. So we're following these individuals until we get them to a place that they stopped, and then having the cops come in and tow their motorcycles and take them for reckless driving and a number of other things that we're seeing around the valley. So we're aware of all of these things. I just don't have enough resources to do everything we could about traffic. But I'm just literally sick and tired of people dying on our roadways, Ed, and we need to change our behaviors.
How do you feel about self-driving vehicles?
I believe that the self-driving vehicles are actually going to be the ultimate answer to traffic fatalities. We're certainly not there yet, but at some point, you know, with the rate that artificial intelligence and technology is growing, I've heard some comparisons to all of the technology that we've seen in our lifetimes as being doubled and tripled within a year. That's an amazing statistic if you think about that. I mean, we used to have pagers and no phones and house phones, and I mean that's all inventions, television. That, you know, so pretty soon I think we're going to get to a place where these automated driving vehicles are going to be the thing that actually stops. Because now all of a sudden you don't have the drunken, drugged driving behavior that you have. They're not going to be running red lights. They're not going to be exceeding speed limits. All of these things and texting is a huge one, right? So I think that's actually going to do a lot to help us change the fatality piece.
And so if a self-driving vehicle runs a red light, who gets the ticket?
Great question. Nobody to take a picture of, right? So I think that would come back to whatever company that was running or that had that vehicle. So look, but it's a really good question because there's a number of things that have to be worked out. I'm not an expert on any of this technology, but there are people that have done it, and it works in other places. So let's take a look at it. And the other thing I'd say to you about this is, all the critics have to say this is, oh, he just wants to take the revenue from the citations that are issued. I don't want a dollar. You know what I'd like to see the revenue go towards? A driving school for brand new kids getting driver's license so we could actually teach kids the laws of the road so they would have a better understanding of that. That would be a great solution to me.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And there was a time that everybody kind of went to driving school, not as much anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
No,
I did. I mean, I did.
I did too.
When I turned 16.
Yeah.
Are DUIs up or down?
I would say they're up. What is really up, though, is this sort of multiple drug / alcohol individual. So, you know, people are hitting their vape pens or whatever the hell these things are, and you know, they're smoking some marijuana, and then the next thing you know, they're at the bar, they're taking a bunch of shots, and they don't realize how the marijuana has already impaired them, and then they're adding alcohol on board, and then it's just leading to disaster regularly.
What about crime in general? I know a lot of the serious crime is down.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What's down and what's up?
So we're down in every measurable crime category with the exception of two, which is traffic fatalities and sexual assaults. So we've seen an increase in sexual assaults, particularly in the Hispanic community, and in this particular case, the data shows that the sex assaults are up, and it's usually a victim between 8 and 14 years old as a female, and that the suspect is generally a family member, an uncle or somebody like that. And so we're working with a number of our Hispanic outreach folks to find ways to get the education piece out there. But listen, I tell you, we've had 2 officer-involved shootings in the last couple of days. You might have seen the video where one of them jumps out and is shooting at my police officer. We're now at 7 officer-involved shootings. That's still 9 less than we had last year, and it's also a historic low for us. That's not a crime statistic that people are really paying attention to, but homicides down another almost 30% right now.
Wow.
3 years ago,
that's big, 30%.
It's huge. We're at 79 homicides. It still sounds like a lot, and it is, but compare that to 3 years ago when I first became sheriff, we were at 158. And so robberies are plummeting. They're about 15% down again. That's 3 years of reductions here.
But how do you account for homicides being down that much?
A lot of it is that outreach that we very first started talking about. But it's also so getting into those communities and making those relationships. They tell us who the problem people are, and we can focus on removing those individuals from the communities. But the other thing is Metro has a homicide solve rate that has exceeded 95% for well over a decade, year over year. If you commit a homicide in our jurisdiction, you get caught and you go to prison. But I also started this violent gun crime unit just a year ago, September. And they were so successful in the first few months of taking these individuals. So they investigate all shootings that don't result in a homicide. So an individual hit was what they were investigating. They had a 100% solve rate from September to December in 2024. Wow. I expanded it in May. So I take existing detectives, re-centralize them, focus them, and gave them the same resources that homicide has to investigate. So they're taking off anybody, whether they shoot at somebody and hit them or they shoot and don't hit them. They've solved 98% of all of those cases. So we're taking known shooters off the streets of Las Vegas, sending them to prison, which is resulting in much lower homicide rates.
And obviously, a lot of that is made possible by the use of technology, which has dramatically, you were mentioning how quickly things are evolving, but it's also helping solve crimes and prevent crimes. You mentioned drones, and I know we have some new police cars. Can you talk about those two things?
So I know everybody knows we got 10 of the cyber trucks donated to us by Ben and Felicia Horowitz, and they've been such a big hit. He asked me about them, and I said it was hard to keep them deployed out on the street because everybody wants them at their community events to see them because they're so cool. And so he's actually buying another 10 of those to utilize for things like recruiting and community events and a number of those kind of things. So,
and what do they do that a normal police vehicle doesn't do?
So they're armored, and when you see them, they actually say tactical vehicle on the side of them. So they carry a lot of additional equipment, de-escalation type equipment, less lethality tools, ropes and ladders and things that we just don't have in a regular police car. And they're dispatched to all of the highest priority cases that we have. And so they actually make it safer for the officer as well. So if they're shot at, it's not going to go through the door. It's not going to, any of those kinds of things. And so we also have an armored SWAT truck coming. That is a Tesla truck, which is going to make it so we can get into tighter locations. And so it's pretty exciting. But I will say this to you about technologies. I'm not a technologist. I can barely turn my iPhone on and off, but I know how to get the resources to the people, and then we get people that are capable of utilizing that technology to levels that I could personally never have done, and they're solving crimes unbelievably well.
Yeah, but it's also what's going on in the laboratories as well, the DNA and all the and new innovations there. What else did I want to chat with you? And the drones, the drones, we have more of them, and they're, instead of sending out a police vehicle to go chase somebody and create a dangerous situation in the street, the drone can do a lot of that work.
Yeah, I mean, even as far as I was talking to the fire chief the other day. We had a house fire. We put the drone over the house fire, and we sent the link to all the command people in the fire department so they could look and see. We could do this better, we could do that better, right? It's an oversight. We have 38 drones that are pre-positioned out in our community. That my drone operations center, which we're gonna have a brand new grand opening here at headquarters for it I believe it's on the 9th of January. It's the most futuristic drone operations fusion center in the country. And we're really, really proud of what it is. And that came from lots of private donations to help us use technology to solve crime here in Las Vegas.
I mean, we have such a unique city, and in a lot of ways, Metro stands alone. And when you look at all the other cities around the country, I mean, you don't have the casino world that we have here, all the security people working in the casinos that you have to work with, and as well as all the tourism that comes in, and 40, 50 million people a year, plus all the diversity that we have. I mean, it creates a very challenging environment. You got elected a few years ago. You're running for re-election. What is it that you looking forward to do if you are re-elected?
Well, that's a really good point that you bring up. I'm more concerned today around the potential for a terror attack in Las Vegas. We represent everything that they hate. We've obviously had attacks here previously. As you've seen, we've arrested people from ISIS and a number of other places here. And obviously with the world that we live in today and the conflict in Ukraine and Gaza and the attacks on the Jewish faith, we have to remain responsible for the safety and security of our community. And so really spending a lot of time talking with other folks that are outside of my world, because I think that when you get stuck in the world that you live in and you don't consider what other people have to say about these issues and think about these issues, we have to find a different way to secure Vegas than we've ever had. I think technology is a big piece of that. It's also, you mentioned the hotel casinos. We train the guest room attendants and the security officers and the valet and the bell and all of those people, and see something, say something, and tell us when you don't think something looks right. And they are a huge force multiplier to us here in Las Vegas.
And we're out of time, but hey, keep up the great work. I feel safe here, so thank you very much.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate you.
Yes, and we'll see you next week.